You heard about COVID, you heard about bird flu, you heard about cicada. But while you were following all those headlines, quietly, invisibly, without a single front-page story, another crisis has been unfolding right now, this very spring. Emergency department visits for tick bites increased by 25% in April 2026 alone. In Connecticut, 30 ticks per day are being tested, and 40% of them carry Lyme disease. Officially, around 90,000 cases are recorded per year, but the real number, according to the CDC, is 500,000 every year. For comparison, COVID at the peak of the first wave was in roughly that same range. Except then, everything stopped. Here, nothing stopped. And here is what should genuinely alarm you. Lyme disease is not just a tick bite and a bullseye rash. In 10 to 20% of people, it becomes chronic, a form that destroys the brain, the heart, the nervous system. A form that doctors fail to recognize for years, and which is frequently mistaken for depression, anxiety, multiple sclerosis, or simply exhaustion. Stay with me, because I'm about to tell you about symptoms you may already be feeling, and not knowing that this is what it is. First of all, what is Lyme disease and why is it so difficult to catch in time? Lyme disease is caused by the bacterium Borrelia burgdorferi, carried by Ixodes ticks, those tiny poppy seed-sized ticks that are practically impossible to notice. Infection occurs through a bite, and according to research, the tick must remain attached for 36 to 48 hours to transmit the infection. But the problem is that most people don't remember being bitten by a tick at all. The classic early symptom is the bullseye rash, a red ring around the bite site. Sounds straightforward. But here is the problem. This sign only appears in 70 to 80% of those infected. 1 in 5 doesn't get it at all. And precisely these people are the most vulnerable. They don't know they are infected, don't see a doctor, and the disease spreads throughout the body. Early stage, flu-like symptoms, fatigue, fever, headache, muscle and joint pain. This is the moment, if the diagnosis is made and antibiotics prescribed, when the disease is effectively treated. In most people. But in 10 to 20%, this doesn't happen. Either because there was no diagnosis, or because treatment didn't work, and then begins what scientists call chronic Lyme, or post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome. And this is where the most alarming part begins. Because what this disease does to the brain is something the news doesn't talk about, but it is precisely what changes everything. Chronic Lyme is not just, my joints hurt and I'm tired. It is a systemic disease that attacks the 3 organs you least want to lose: the brain, the heart, and the nervous system. Here is what science says about what happens to the brain. Borrelia burgdorferi can cross the blood-brain barrier, the very same protective barrier we talked about when we discussed microplastics. Once inside the brain, the bacteria triggers inflammation of neural tissue, neuroborreliosis, and here is what that means in practice. Research has documented the following neuropsychiatric symptoms in patients with long-standing Lyme disease: brain fog and memory impairment, literally the same brain fog we see in long COVID. Impaired verbal and nonverbal memory, slowed information processing, anxiety, depression, and, this is what shocks most people, in severe cases, suicidal ideation, aggression, psychosis, and even symptoms resembling schizophrenia. This is not an exaggeration. This is data from peer-reviewed research published in the U.S. National Medical Library's PMC database. Harvard Medical School draws an explicit parallel. Chronic Lyme and long COVID have strikingly similar symptom profiles. Both are characterized by fatigue that doesn't resolve with rest. Both brain fog. Both joint pain. Both sleep disturbances. And both frequently go undiagnosed for years. But there is something even more alarming about exactly how doctors miss this diagnosis, and what happens to many patients who think they have something else entirely. Here is what I consider the most serious problem in this entire story, and what is almost never discussed. Officially, around 90,000 cases of Lyme disease are recorded in the US per year. The real number, according to CDC estimates, is 500,000. This means that every year between 400 and 410,000 cases remain invisible, unregistered, untreated. Why? Three main reasons. First, the test is imperfect. The standard blood test for Lyme disease must be done within a specific time window, the first few weeks after infection. Too early, and it gives a false negative. Moreover, the test detects only a few strains out of many that exist. If you have a different strain, the test may show nothing. Second, symptoms masquerade. Fatigue, brain fog, joint pain, anxiety, depression, these are symptoms of dozens of other conditions. Patients are diagnosed with fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, chronic fatigue syndrome, depression. Treated for the wrong thing, in the wrong way, for years. Third, and this is important to understand, many doctors simply don't think of Lyme disease if the patient doesn't live in an endemic area, but the tick map expands every year due to climate change. What was a non-tick region 10 years ago may be one today. Johns Hopkins held a special media briefing on May 5, 2026 on exactly this topic. The scientists' conclusion: the data are telling us now is the time to take action. And now, the symptoms you need to know. Because early diagnosis is the difference between full recovery and a chronic condition lasting years. Let's talk about symptoms. And here I want you to be honest with yourself. Early stage, first days and weeks, bullseye rash, a red ring with a white center around the bite. Remember, 1 in 5 doesn't get it. Fever and chills, severe fatigue, headache, muscle and joint pain, swollen lymph nodes. Middle stage, weeks and months without treatment. Joint pain that migrates, today the knee, tomorrow the elbow. Neurological symptoms, numbness, tingling in hands and feet. Problems with memory and concentration, sleep disturbances, rapid or irregular heartbeat. Late chronic stage, months and years, severe joint arthritis, brain fog that doesn't lift, neuropathy, chronic fatigue, cognitive impairment. And what is almost never discussed, psychiatric symptoms, severe depression, anxiety disorders, and in serious cases, suicidal ideation. PMC research directly describes Lyme disease as an often overlooked diagnosis in patients with neuropsychiatric symptoms. This means if you have been treating depression or anxiety for years and they don't resolve, doctors may be treating the wrong thing. An important reminder, these symptoms can have many causes. Having these symptoms does not mean you have Lyme disease, but it does mean it is worth talking to a doctor, especially if you spend time outdoors. And now, what you can do right now. And about one piece of news that for the first time in decades gives real hope. The good news, and it is real. First, a vaccine. In March 2026, Pfizer and Valneva announced Phase 3 trial results for their Lyme disease vaccine. Efficacy, more than 70% in preventing confirmed cases in people aged 5 and older. The companies intend to file for regulatory approval. This is the first significant breakthrough in Lyme disease prevention in decades. Second, research. The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is now actively studying the mechanisms of chronic Lyme. Maine Health has launched a major 5-year, $20 million study specifically on post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome. Science is moving. In the meantime, what to do right now? First, protection from bites. Repellents containing DEET or permethrin. This is proven protection. Light-colored clothing that covers skin. Full body check after spending time outdoors, especially groin, armpits, behind ears, scalp. Shower within 2 hours of being outside. Second, if you find a tick, remove with tweezers as close to the skin surface as possible. Pull upward slowly and steadily. Don't twist, don't apply petroleum jelly. Keep the tick in a bag. Note the date. Third, if symptoms appear after a bite, see a doctor immediately. Don't wait for a bullseye rash. 1 in 5 won't get one. Ask to be tested for Lyme disease. Fourth, if symptoms have been ongoing and doctors are stumped, ask about Lyme disease testing, especially if you spend time outdoors or have lived in endemic areas. This is not paranoia. This is medical literacy. I want to end this conversation with the same thought I started with. While the whole world was watching COVID, bird flu, and cicada, Lyme disease was quietly becoming one of the largest unrecognized public health crises. 500,000 new cases a year, tens of thousands of chronic patients being treated for the wrong thing, brains deteriorating for years while doctors search for something else. This is not conspiracy theory. This is data from the CDC, Johns Hopkins, Harvard, and Pfizer, published in May 2026. The good news, we have prevention. A vaccine is coming. There is treatment, if caught in time. And there is science that is finally beginning to take chronic Lyme seriously, just as it began to take long COVID seriously. You don't need to be an expert. You need to know the symptoms. You need to check yourself after walks. You need to not be afraid to ask your doctor. I research science and translate it into human language. All sources are in the description. Until next time, check yourself after every walk in nature.